Welcome back to the Attack the Rack podcast, brought to you by Get to Two Media. Today we have back again recurring guest Peter Hunsberger. We're going to talk about the Super Bowl and some of the prop bets that go along with it. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Attack the Rack podcast. I am your host, Kurt Van Hecken, and you are tuning in to the number one rated podcast on the planet by the people that rated it number one. The Attack the Rack podcast, as always, is brought to you by Get to Two Media. Before we dive into this conversation with Peter Hunsberger, first got to give a shout out and a thank you to the sponsor of the program today. Today we're sponsored by a different YouTube channel. That channel is called Chillaxation Sounds. If you have trouble falling asleep at night, you need to check out Chillaxation Sounds YouTube channel. There is sounds for rain on your window, coffee brewing, snowy, windy night. And the great thing about these is that the screen is black, so there's no distraction from light. You can turn it on your phone, on your TV, and not be distracted by any sort of light and just enjoy the soothing sounds that help you fall asleep. I'll put a link to Chillaxation Sounds in the description. All right, welcome back to the Attack the Rack podcast, Mr. Peter Hunsberger. So happy to have you back.
Happy to be here.
You've kind of been the NFL guy so far on the program. And today we're sticking with that theme. Obviously, we got a big game coming up Sunday. It's called the Super Bowl. It's the championship game of the NFL. It features this year the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. We're going to kind of talk about the game and some of the betting lines that are going on, some kind of fun prop bets as well. Before we do that, Pete, last week the Philadelphia Eagles were victorious over the San Francisco 49ers, and the Kansas City Chiefs were victorious over the Cincinnati Bengals, setting up the Super Bowl matchup. Who did you pick in those games?
Well, as a Philadelphia resident, fly Eagles fly, I was picking the Eagles to win, but I thought it would be a much different game than it turned out. And I still feel like in the two playoff games, we haven't seen the Eagles in a setting that gives us good intel into how they'll look against the Chiefs. They had an easy game against the Giants, and then obviously the Niners quarterback situation fell apart. I was warming up in the third quarter just in case here in Philly.
You got a heck of a throw, Peter.
I mean, I've been known to throw the ball pretty well, Uncle Rico style, but in the Bengals-Chiefs game, I had the Bengals, so I was off there. I think watching that game, it's interesting. I've heard some people talk some about this. I feel like the Chiefs' defense is one you don't think of much during the season. They're always kind of average, let's say, and yet in certain playoff games, I feel like they start to get this nasty pass rush, and I think that was the difference in the game. They were putting pressure on Burrow, and they kind of made the game really tough for Cincy. I mean, look, Cincy had lots of opportunities, and obviously that final drive, there were some weird calls or non-calls, but that last play, you shouldn't be in that position. I'll just say that. It's easy to blame that guy for that last play, but I mean, these are guys going hard for 3+ hours, and it takes a step out of bounds. It's hard to turn your brain off. So I don't fault that guy. I fault the Bengals for not putting the game away earlier. So kudos to Mahomes, man, on one leg. Guy's unreal.
Yeah, and I wonder too if the Kansas City defense doesn't get the kind of credit it deserves just because of the overwhelming hype that the offense with Mahomes and Travis Kelce gets. Kind of overshadows maybe the strong play of the defense. I also did pick Cincinnati in that one. And I was wrong on the NFC side as well. I picked the 49ers. What obviously Jalen Hurts, he finished the season injured. How do you think he's looking in these two playoff games?
As I said earlier, I think they haven't really had a good test yet, and so I think when I have seen Hurts throw the ball in the playoffs, it hasn't looked great to the on the eye test, but it just hasn't mattered, and they haven't really had to push it much. So some of that you could chalk up to just, again, the Giants game was kind of a cakewalk, and he was injured towards the end of the year. Maybe it's just that he didn't get his rhythm, but you could argue that Super Bowl 2 weeks off, that still might be an issue. I think the biggest surprise to me was even when they were winning with Josh Johnson and a QB for the Niners, or a one-armed Purdy, I felt like they were still running some designed runs for Hurts on some obvious Hurts running situations, which to me puts him at risk for a hit on the shoulder. So part of me is wondering whether that is an indication that maybe it's not as bad as we think. But
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I think for a Super Bowl, it's smart for the Eagles to play coy, and I don't think we're going to get a whole lot of intel heading in. But I think we have to assume he'll be ready to go, and it's more of a matter, I think, of can he get into a rhythm and get some confidence back in his throwing, because I think that's probably part of it too, just not having had a good run of games.
All right, and then the quarterback on the other side, Patrick Mahomes, he's had two phenomenal games. He's thrown for 4 touchdowns, no picks. Last game in the AFC Championship, 326 yards passing. We'll see if that now can translate into the Super Bowl. Statistically speaking, he hasn't been great in his 2 Super Bowls. Passing wise, he has 4 picks and 2 touchdowns. Pete, let's talk about some of the betting stuff for the game. Super Bowl is always a big betting day. There is an infinite amount of things, it seems like, that you can bet in or bet on for this game. All right, so let's start with the coin toss. Certainly you can bet who's going to win it, but you can also bet if it's going to be heads or if it's going to be tails, which would be a 50-50 bet. That's plus 100 either way. Okay, in the 56 Super Bowls that have been played, heads has come up 27 times, tails 29 times. The longest streak ever, 5 years in a row, 2009 to 2013, the heads won. Also, interesting to note, in the last 8 years, the team that won the flip actually lost the game. And, that's something else that you can bet on. It's a plus 300 for the Chiefs to win the toss and the game, plus 250 for the Eagles to win the toss and the game, minus 400 for the Chiefs to win the toss but lose the game, and then minus 330 for the Eagles to win the toss but lose the game.
It's interesting. I feel like, so heads or tails, obviously 50-50. We're not going to get into any sort of weighted coin debates here. Just take your pick for something fun. I do think it's a fun thing to have a bet for before the game, something to kind of kick things off a little bit. But I was looking up some regular season coin toss data, and let me ask you a trivia. Which team in the NFL had the most coin toss wins this year?
You mean, this season?
In 2022, guess which NFL team in the regular season had the most coin toss wins?
I'm going to say the Detroit Lions.
That's a great guess. It's a phenomenal franchise. They are not. They're more in the middle of the pack. So the Philadelphia Eagles won 13 coin tosses this year out of 17. And they deferred in all 13 of those.
Okay.
And In fact, only a few teams did not defer. And it's sort of interesting. And so the Chiefs are kind of right in the middle, about 8. So I guess if you want to play the odds a little bit here, maybe you say, hey, the Eagles are a hot coin toss win team, and you can throw a few dollars that way. But I do think it's interesting, in talking about the last 8 games, streak where the team that won the flip lost a game. I wonder if, there's always these theories of, you want the ball first, set the tone, go out, get a touchdown, get an early lead, or do you want to get the ball first in the second half? There typically is a rationale there of like, do you trust your defense, or maybe you say, no, we want to get out in front and put the other team on the hot seat. Again, most teams deferred the second half. Even the Eagles did a lot this year, or in every game they won the toss this year. So, but I wonder if in the Super Bowl it's just a little different, right? The team that gets that first touchdown or first score in that first possession, does that give them a psychological edge? Because, okay, now you really put the pressure on the other team. I don't know, just throwing it out there.
No, that's interesting. I mean, right away, my mind goes to is I would rather have the ball to start the second half. But then I think I also don't want to be down 7-0 either.
Right.
One other thing though too, in the 56 Super Bowls, 31 times the team that won the flip lost the game. So
interesting. Well,
that would then you think, okay, well, the Eagles are super hot winning the flip this year. Okay, so take them to win the flip, but then based on the fact that 31 times the team that's won the flip lost the game, then do you lean towards taking Kansas City to win the game? It's just, there's a million ways to dissect it, but
it is. Well, I'll say this. I'll leave you with this too, because there are some other bets you can place, right, in terms of like who scores the first touchdown.
Yeah.
And who gets the ball first is a little bit biased towards who's going to get that first score. Not to say it always happens. But in looking at this season, including playoffs, the Eagles had 6 games in both playoff games. They've had this where they had the ball first. And in all 6 of those games, they were the first team to score a touchdown.
Oh, wow.
And in 5 of those 6, Jalen Hurts was quarterback. One was Gardner Minshew. In the 5 games that Hurts was quarterback, when they got the ball first, they scored in their first possession in all 5. So the Eagles are a team that if they get the ball first in this game, I feel like maybe you can find a parlay out there or something to say, Chiefs win the toss and defer, Eagles get ball first and get a touchdown first.
Yeah.
But you might also say, hey, the Chiefs might want that ball first in the Super Bowl. So this is where you can go into circles a little bit. But,
I know. There's just an infinite way to look at it. National anthem, Pete. We can bet on the length of the national anthem. The latest I've seen, the over-under is 2 minutes 5 seconds for the anthem. Country singer Luke Bryan was the last. I'm sorry. Country singer Chris Stapleton is singing the anthem this year. The last time a country singer sang the anthem was Luke Bryan, and he was at 2 minutes and 4 seconds. Again, the over-under 2:05. 7 of the last 10 have gone over 2 minutes, and the over has hit. It's pretty much been 50-50 the last 15 years. 8 has hit the over, 8 times the over is hit. So it's almost 50-50.
Interesting. Well, my first instinct was, all right, country singer, I'm taking the over, slow Southern drawl, kind of drawing those words out. But your Luke Bryan comment is interesting because that's a good proxy for what we'd expect. I don't know country singers and who's who, so maybe you could do some quick listening and see if Stapleton's got a little bit more of a drawl. But I will say this, man. I know logically and mathematically, unders and overs are set typically at spots where there's equal probability up or down, and not always, right? Sometimes they're just looking to balance their books, and you can find and squeeze out dollars here and there where maybe they're not very efficient in their line setting. But let's just say in general, they're pretty good at those lines. Psychologically, I just have such a hard time choosing unders because the anxiety of watching a whole game for something not to happen to me is so much less enjoyable than watching a game and just hoping for something to happen. I'd love to see some data on. I mean, I think the data generally shows that people tend to choose overs more than unders, but I'm curious of your thoughts on that.
No, I would totally agree with you. When I'm watching a game, I'm not. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I want to take the over because I don't want to watch the game wanting points not to be scored. That you hit the nail on the head. The anxiety factor there. And then as far as this 205, I know nothing about country music either. I would kind of, it's funny you said, the southern slowness. I that's where my mind goes too, and kind of like, these songs they're telling a story. So, a completely uneducated guess would be taking the over. In that one.
Let's roll at that over. Let's pound that over as much as we can here.
All right, and then I got one more for you, and these kind of fun ones. Gatorade shower. So the color of the Gatorade that gets dumped after the game on the head coach. Lime green, yellow, all together. So if you're betting lime green, yellow, you get all three of those. I guess that's because there are, I don't know, probably some people call it lime, some call it green, some call it yellow. That's at plus 125. Orange plus 250. Purple plus 650. Red plus 700. Clear or water plus 700. And then blue plus 900. Now, I don't ever really remember seeing clear or water before. So I don't know. I certainly wouldn't go that route, but.
Well, I do enjoy me back in the day some Gatorade Frost, maybe the white, but yeah, I feel like well, first of all, it's kind of funny, right? Because like the equipment managers will know, like they'll know the answer to this.
Yeah, you're right.
They probably know the answer right now, so I guess they've got to probably limit the betting on this one. But I think to your point, last time the Chiefs won, in your notes, I know you shared that the orange was the winner.
Yeah.
My instinct would kind of think like, hey man, if you're the Eagles, you want something green there. But I feel like at the odds I'm seeing here, I feel like I'd go red because you got the most upside of plus 700 for red, just a real solid fruit punch.
Mm-hmm.
I would hammer the red here just to get some skin in that game.
All right, yeah, no, I hear you with the I would go orange in the Kansas City Chiefs jug, and I'd go lime, green in the Eagles jug. So I think, but then again, is it like that's too obvious?
Right, and I think, and I was listening to Joe House this week from the Ringer podcast, and he was kind of talking it through and saying, they're going to have the Gatorade there. All the Gatorade is going to be the same because they're not going to just have one for the.
Okay.
They're going to fill it up with the Gatorade that the guys want. So if the team says we like orange, it's our favorite. I think they're going to try to stick with what the players need for performance in the game. So his argument was, don't overthink a special thing.
Okay.
And I don't know. I don't know if anyone I guess we don't see the Gatorade colors during the season,
Right.
but if you did some real sleuthing, maybe you could see like a little Gatorade mustache or something after they take a drink, see if they can get any color there. But
Well,
yeah, it'll be interesting.
and here's the other thing is we don't know how many Gatorade jugs they have on the sideline. Do they have multiple options on the sideline during the game? Some guys like orange, some guys like red. So do they have multiple options on the sideline, and then it all depends on which jug they grab? I don't know.
I think that's a fair question. I think we got to continue to analyze that one a little bit more, but I think that maybe they got a little variety pack there. And honestly, that might be the best way to go for them is have the variety pack and then let a random team member grab it to do the dumping. So there's no tomfoolery before the game of getting large bets on a Gatorade color.
All right, so that's kind of some of the fun stuff that I came across. What are some of the things you're looking at?
So let's start with the Chiefs. So I think here's in general kind of what I'm thinking. So, all right, the Eagles' pass D is, has been well documented this year, and they're extremely hard to throw against. So you have a combination of like good pass rush, lots of sacks, and then you've got some good D backs, and so just a really tricky pass D. And interestingly, though, I think a year or two ago with Mahomes and Tyreek Hill, and maybe some of this is what happens in the Super Bowl in his past too. I think they had a different vertical game and a lot of deep throws, and I think Mahomes did so well this year despite losing Hill, but he changed they changed their game plan, and I think they're a team now that can really dink them dizzy, right? They can pick you apart in lots of little ways and death by 1,000 cuts because the league has kind of adjusted to Mahomes, and so he's like, all right, and he's a technician down the middle of the field. So I think, and I think the other piece of that is like I think they want to hold possession of the ball. Like what they don't want to do is get in a situation where their guys get defenses tired out second half, and the Eagles' run D can just grind them down. So you keep your D fresh by kind of extending drives. So I think the whole idea that I've heard some of the experts talk about this past week is, look for Mahomes to have lots of short completions and lots of attempts. So if you're looking for some bets, maybe the yardage won't be there to some great extent, but maybe lots of completions. And so for that reason, I think, Kelsey's line is 7.5 for receptions, and he's only done that 2 in the last 11 games. But I think this could be a game where the Eagles like to kind of funnel stuff to the middle of the field, and maybe they'll give them that 8 to 10 yard pass play. So I like that kind of game. And I think you kind of have to look at someone like a Jerick McKinnon, with Mecole Hardman out, just picture McKinnon getting a little dump off passes. So those are some things I like for the Chiefs. And I think, again, if that's the way the game plays out, where they're trying to extend drives, keep the clock moving, and then the Eagles are running the ball, you could see a lower scoring game because there's lots of time just being eaten away with these kind of short passes and runs. And then I guess the other thing for the Chiefs I sort of like is I guess there's a few different things.
Well,
I think the Eagles.
Hold on one second. So you're liking Mahomes over on completions?
Yeah, I think they like Mahomes over on completions, and maybe on attempts you can get that one too.
Yep. Okay.
And then I think I like Isaiah Pacheco's lines. Eagles' run D has not been great this year, and again, I think for the Chiefs, they'd be happy to establish that run, get that run establish it. Certainly won't establish itself. Certainly won't. And I think his line I looked earlier this week is like 64 yards for Pacheco. He's been running really hard. You get these rookie running backs that kind of ease their way in, they are going to be fresher in a Super Bowl body wise than the D lineman they're running against. Pacheco has really impressed me. So I think that 65-yard over under, I think he goes over that pretty easily. And I guess my Hail Mary on the Chiefs would be they run lots of heavy tight end personnel in the red zone. I think, one of these obscure tight ends, a Gray or a Bell, one of these kind of guys, or a long shot touchdown. You can get some pretty good odds on those guys. So I think I'd lean that way on the Chiefs.
Okay.
And then on the Eagles, I really like Goddard in this game. I think Kansas City is not great against tight ends, but they're also, I think, one of the worst teams in the NFL in terms of red zone pass D. So, while the Eagles, you think about, typically they're going to get a lot of rushing touchdowns, right? And they spread it out. It's Hurts, it's Miles Sanders, it's a Boston Scott, Gainwell. A lot of that's game script and end of the game. But I think this could be a game where Hurts goes over 1.5 passing touchdowns.
Okay.
And I like Goddard to get a passing or a receiving touchdown and clear his I'd like him to clear his yardage over under. Trying to look up now what his what the line is for him on yardage, but I do like Goddard in this game, and especially to get a touchdown. So yeah, those are a couple things I like. And then I guess the other thing, again, going back to that point on the running attack and how it gets spread, I do think Miles Sanders is a little undervalued because so many of his games, he's not getting up to 20 rushes a game, right? He's got, up to 10 or 12, but then it's, okay, we're going to bring in Boston Scott. Okay, now it's fourth quarter. Kenneth Gainwell run wild. If this game stays close, and again, I'll kind of ground us in that whole thing too. You really have to go in to say, what do I think is going to happen in the game? Is this going to be a close game all throughout? Is this going to be a game that the Eagles get up by 14 and then try to hold? Is this a game they get behind? So always thinking about the game script. How do you see it playing out? I think is good for aligning your bets with that script. But if you think this is going to be a close game with the Eagles kind of slightly holding a slight lead the whole game, this could be a good Miles Sanders game. They just haven't had a ton of these types of games this year. And it's interesting, if you look at both of these teams, some of the teams they've kind of struggled against. You think about like the Texans, Chiefs went into overtime against the Texans. Chiefs lost to the Colts, and the Eagles almost lost to the Colts.
Yeah.
They've kind of struggled against some of these average teams, but when they've played the good teams, we haven't. It's been a few games. Yeah, the Chiefs have had much closer games. Some of the Eagles games, it was during the Gardner Minshew games, and they kind of had a close one against the Cowboys. We just haven't seen a lot of these types of games for them. So there could be a good reason that Sanders comes out and does something good. And I would say the only other thing I'd say is thinking about it from a betting perspective. So again, the Eagles have not played from behind a ton. So they're a team that likes to get an early lead and then hold that lead. So if you like them to win the game, like they're not, I don't think they're a team, especially with Hurts unknown on some of his, we haven't seen him in these, hey, I'm down 14, we got to come back. And I think with his passing a little bit up in the air with his injury, like for me, if you think the Eagles are going to win the game, you might as well parlay that with Eagles leading at halftime. Like for them to win, I think they need to get up early. So you want to parlay multiple things there to increase your odds.
Mm-hmm.
If you think that's the right narrative, again, everyone's got to figure that out. And I think, again, playing the under on this one, I would never take the under because I just no fun for me. But I do think they're, if the over under is sitting at 51.5, I think you got to lean the under in this one.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we will come right back with more of the Attack the Rack podcast. And we are back. Do you find yourself being fascinated and interested in the world of real estate, whether you're looking to buy or sell, or just gain some knowledge? If that does sound like you should ring Realtor Ryan. Realtor Ryan has been in real estate for over 20 years. He has helped me in my journey in learning about it, and he can do the same for you. If you're interested, his contact info is in the description. And now back to our interview with Peter Hunsberger. Yeah, and then, one other thing in regards to a potentially close game, one thing I like it would be you can bet on a score with within the last 2 minutes of you can do the half or the quarter, the fourth quarter. I like the fourth quarter. In a close game, I could see last team with the ball scoring, and last team with the ball to win. That would probably produce a score with under 2 minutes to go. So that's something I like.
Yeah, and again, I think in all these kind of player props and nuanced game bets, it's kind of talking yourself through you're kind of like envisioning how the game is going to go, and you're picturing it and saying, does that seem likely? Does that seem reasonable? It does feel like in the scenario you just shared, it's like my brain goes to, if that's going to happen, it's going to be Mahomes, willing his team and finding a way. Just kind of reviewing their season and some of those games they played this year, that definitely was. There were games where they started out a little clunky and didn't look perfect, but they just kind of willed themselves there. And I feel like it could be a defining Mahomes game if he's able to do it.
All right. So overall, Pete, how do you see this? How do you see this game going? Kind of conclude that with who you think is going to win the game.
Oh man. Well, I think the way I'm seeing this going, I'm going to go Eagles. And I think, again, just kind of going along with what I was just sharing, I feel like if I'm going to go Eagles, I have to go, Eagles to kind of get out to a lead early and then maintain the lead. And obviously the Chiefs aren't a team that is just going to roll over or going to get down and start getting into trouble, because they've got, obviously Mahomes will keep them in every game. But I see it, Eagles getting a lead and the Chiefs kind of playing catch up most of the game and just not quite getting there. So there's probably a little bit of Philadelphia bias there, wanting this for the city that I live in. But
yeah, understandable.
But I don't know. I do feel like the Eagles have been the team all year that I feel like on offense, on defense, is the most complete. I mean, the only thing about the Chiefs that scares me is Patrick Mahomes. Obviously Kelsey's incredible, but he's
Mahomes to be incredible.
Exactly. He's so good because Mahomes can find him, kind of the perfect pair. And yeah, so I feel like, you're looking at the Chiefs last week, they brought some pass rush and they made Burrow's life miserable. I just don't know how you do that in this kind of a game, because I think Hurts is a guy who's going to be, mechanical in terms of throwing the ball. And if he doesn't see something, he's going to, and if you're over committing on the pass rush, he can run and hurt you. So I just feel like last week's formula, it's hard to see that working against Hurts. And so for that reason, I just don't think the Chiefs have enough. And so to me, it's the Eagles' game to lose. They have the better skill position players. The running game is incredible. Hurts with a dual threat. Their defense, in general, is pretty good, and especially their pass defense. So it's going to be a real matchup, right, in the passing game. Best passing offense, best passing defense. I just feel like the Chiefs don't have those playmakers to overcome that type of a tight matchup. I feel like they have a lot of guys that are good enough, but I think in this scenario, the Eagles have a little more talent on defense and can put up a good test for the Chiefs. So I'm going Eagles. Let's see here.
You
28-24.
28-24. So you would the latest line I saw was Eagles -1.5. So you'd be good with that.
Yeah, I think so. I think they at least win by a field goal. I like them to win by 4 because I feel like if it's just a field goal, I'm just too nervous about Mahomes in those last waiting seconds, even if he gets the ball 30 seconds left, right? Pulling off some magic again. So going 28-24, and that would put it slightly over, which also is good for me because I hate those unders. So see if that works out.
Yeah, that is slightly over. I know you mentioned 51.5. I saw 50.5, but either way, you'd be okay.
Yeah, just clear. I do think it's interesting, thinking about the other thing is the MVP bets. I found a lot of the sites. I was doing some cruising today. Doing a same game parlay, you try to stack certain things that are heavily correlated. Obviously, the books know that, and so you're not going to get pure odds juiced, right? If you say Eagles winning after the first quarter and Eagles winning after second quarter, you don't just have the compounding odds. They say, well, we'll give you a little bit of a boost, but not the full odds. But they also have a limited selection of bets that you can parlay in the same game. And there were a few things I was trying to see if we could, you could parlay in terms of an MVP. So think about like a long shot MVP, like Hassan Reddick, right? Defensive guy.
Yeah.
Well, if he's going to win that, and this is like, again, listen to the Ring Air podcast this week, and some of those guys, Sharp and House and everyone else, had a good take on this. It's like if you're gonna bet on Reddick to win Super Bowl MVP, that means that Hurts has to have a bad game, right? Because quarterbacks almost always win it. So then you're like, all right,
yeah,
Reddick to win the MVP. Let's say he gets 3 sacks and a strip fumble, whatever. And then you say Hurts has to have at least 2 interceptions. So now you're kind of stacking a couple of long odds Eagles to win. But again, not every book is allowing you to stack all these things. So
yeah, okay,
you got to do some searching and find what you can. But that seems to be the way to go for MVP. Is you got to try to, if you can, try to stack the parlay.
Mm-hmm. Who do you like? Who do you like for MVP?
Well,
if you're taking the Eagles to win, then got to be an Eagle.
It has to be an Eagle. I do think that it's hard to imagine Hurts not winning the MVP in that scenario, right? Like if they can get an early lead, let's say he rushes for a touchdown, he throws for 2 or 3 more, right? Because as I mentioned, how you can beat the Chiefs in the red zone seems to be through the air, which is like the opposite of the Eagles standard. So for that reason, I feel like it just odds are it feels like it has to be Hurts based on that scenario. But I just don't feel like you can get good enough odds to make that a standalone bet that's like that much fun.
Yeah, I think the last I saw, Hurts and Mahomes both were plus 130.
Yeah, for me, doing my little $5 micro bets, I usually try to do some fun parlays to juice it up a little bit.
Sure.
But again, I think the matchup just seems really good this year. I keep thinking about some of the different elements of the matchup, and I do feel like these are the 2 teams, right? The best quarterback in the world, Patrick Mahomes, the most improved quarterback and player, I think, in Jalen Hurts, the most complete team in the Eagles. Both teams really well coached. You got the Andy Reid stuff. You've got the Kelsey brothers. I mean, this is, I think, the Super Bowl we all, in hindsight, probably should have seen coming. And it'll be a great game.
Speaking of the Kelsey brothers, I saw one crazy bet. I think it was like plus 15,000 for both Kelsey brothers to score a touchdown. Certainly unlikely for the Philadelphia version of the Kelsey brother duo, being that he's an offensive lineman. But
Yeah, and there are some of those kind of like odds that a quarterback gets a reception. I mean, there's no way that we're gonna have another Nick Foles touchdown situation. But again, getting back to this like long shot touchdown scorers, and I always like going for that first one because sometimes the first touchdown is just kind of this weird. It's like, whoa, who's that guy out of nowhere? I feel like if you can get some plus 8,000 for the second and third string Eagles tight ends. They've barely got to catch a game or less.
Yeah.
But like again, you think if you go back to this idea of like the Eagles seem more likely to get some touchdowns in the red zone through the air versus the typical running. If you follow that, you get guys like Zach Pascal, who has kind of taken over Quez Watkins as the third wide receiver. So he could get loose at plus 7,000 for the first touchdown. That could be pretty interesting. I think that, to me, the most logical first TD scorer would be Dallas Goedert, right? You got Eagles seem like if they get the ball first, most likely to score that touchdown quickly. If it goes through the air, I mean, Goddard against the Kansas City team, weak against the tight end, that seems like the chalk play. At plus 1,200, that's not a terrible odds.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of MVP, one thing I found interesting when I was looking at the bets, so you can pick, you can bet on what position is going to win the MVP. So QB minus 500, wide receiver plus 700, tight end plus 1,000, and running back plus 1,300. This stood out to me because I think this is just like evidence of how much the game has migrated away from rushing the ball to more so passing the ball. When of those four positions, running back is, the biggest long shot. When we were, I don't know, back in like the 90s, I don't think that would be true. I mean, obviously with the 49ers, you would obviously Jerry Rice probably would be a better bet than Roger Craig. But overall, back in the day, I would think more often than not the running back would be right behind quarterback. And now of those four, they're the longest odds.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, even looking at these two teams, right? Like Pacheco has kind of been a rookie that's come on back half of the year, but they bring in McKinnon a lot for various stuff, and obviously Clyde Edwards-Helaire earlier in the year was the guy, and you've got kind of these middling guys behind them. So Andy Reid doesn't have this kind of workhorse back scenario. And look at the Eagles. Miles Sanders is their main back, but Jalen Hurts is the 1B in terms of rushing situations. And then they love to bring in Boston Scott. They love to bring in Gainwell in different scenarios. And to me, that makes a lot of sense. Like you're keeping guys fresh. You're keeping the defense on their toes a little bit. I mean, with wide receivers, you don't throw the ball to the same guy 40 times or 30 times or 20 times. And so, I think having running backs just change in terms of going from like a workhorse, this is our guy, we're going to give him this 25 carries. There's a few guys in the league like that, the Derrick Henry's types, but they're kind of freaks in terms of their physical abilities. And I think to your point, the game has changed a bunch over the years, and the position is now one that is more committee based and used in more flexible ways, and it's certainly changed the game of fantasy football, as we all know.
Yes, it has. All right, Pete. Well, hey, always appreciate you coming on the program. Love your the way that you break down stuff and analyze things. Super excited for the Super Bowl this weekend, but it's also kind of like it's kind of sad too. The end of the season. It's kind of like March Madness. You get so excited for March Madness, you're just loving it. You're loving it, and then it's over, and then you're sad. So that's kind of how I'm feeling right now. Super excited, but also knowing that come 10 o'clock Sunday night, it's going to all be over for the year.
Yes, it will be. I've had to relearn my kids' names and figure out what grade they're in this past week with no football for the first time since August, which is crazy, right? I mean, to think since the summer, this past Sunday is the first Sunday that we have not had NFL football, and good time to reacquaint yourself with friends and family and a good book here there, or transition into college basketball for all you gambling degenerates, hop into the NBA a little bit. But it's been a fun season, and I think again this is a Super Bowl that is a really good matchup of two teams that are both worthy. So I'm just hoping for a good game. I feel like last weekend, with the divisional championship games, obviously the Eagles-Niners game was kind of a bust. Yeah. Even the Bengals Chiefs was close, and it was a good game, but it wasn't quite the firepower I think some of us were hoping for. With some back and forth, it was more defensive, a little ugly, some turnovers, some missed penalties, some just dumb penalties, some etc. So, I'm hoping this game just delivers in terms of high quality football.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I was really disappointed in the Bengals. Not that I'm a fan, but I was really hopping on their bandwagon, and I thought they were going to beat the Chiefs, and I thought they were going to go on to beat the Niners in the Super Bowl. Certainly, the Niners lost as well. I think because of the fact that I was high on the Bengals and the Chiefs were able to defeat them, and they are getting a point and a half, I probably would lean towards the Chiefs to win the game in a close one. Also probably barely over the over. That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, again, I feel like I'm a little biased here in Philly, and I like to align my bets with my rooting interest just to make things fun. But I think if I had lots of money, more than my little $5 micro bets,
right?
I think it's just hard to bet against Patrick Mahomes, who has been here twice already in his young career, right? Like, and I'm assuming his ankle is better this week. I guess that's the big thing, right? Like, if he's still not, if it truly is a high ankle sprain, which I think there's a lot of questions of whether it is or isn't, but if it truly is, I mean, we saw what happened with Hassan Reddick and Brock Purdy. There's a couple guys on the Eagles defense that can really get to the quarterback and rough him up a little bit. So that's the one fear I would have in taking the Chiefs. Is like if Mahomes tweaks that ankle anymore, I mean, you got Chad Henne up against the best pass defense in the league. That's lights out for the Chiefs. But fun for us Michigan fans to at least remember. Many years ago, Mr. Chad.
Yeah, and ultimately, I just want to see a good close game. That's not. I want to see some points too. I don't when I say close game, I don't mean was it the Patriots Eagles or not Eagles Patriots Rams a couple of years ago, like a 13-9 or something like that. No, thank you. No, thank
Terrible.
you. I want to see a close back and forth game that at least both teams are in the 20s is what I'd like to see, and that just comes from not having a rooting interest. I think that's cool that you've got a rooting interest. I don't know what that's like in the Super Bowl being a Lions fan, and I know you're a big Lions fan too. You obviously don't know what that was. Lions are your team. You don't know what that's like either, but it is pretty cool that, you found a home base in Philadelphia and, have a local team to root for.
Yeah, as I've told some friends around here, I invited a friend and his wife and kids over for the Super Bowl on Sunday. Probably make it through the first quarter, and then kids will need to skedaddle to bed. But he's I think originally from just outside of Cleveland, so
okay.
He's like, I kind of told him, hey, we got to root for local team here, but he promised me if the Browns and Lions ever make a Super Bowl, we'll get together for that one. So doubtful.
Yeah. Tell him thanks, but probably won't happen.
It won't, but it'll be I got to say, Philadelphia has gone through lots of sports pain. They've had some, success in the last 15, 20 years with the Phillies with a title and the Eagles with the title of Nick Foles. But, we lost the baseball World Series on the same day we lost the MLS World Cup back in November.
Oh.
And the city is hurting a little bit from so close, but no chagrin. And the Sixers are going to do some damage in the NBA, but to have all these teams doing well and not going to, they get close with no title, this would be a painful loss for Philadelphia. This would be 3 straight, Big Five sporting championship losses. That'd be a pretty epic Buffalo Bills-y kind of moment for us.
Yeah. Yikes. All right. Well, hey, best of luck to your Eagles. I think either way, Pete, I think it's going to be a close game. I think a lot of people are saying that, and it should be fun.
Yes. Fly, Eagles, fly. Let's do this.
All right, Peter. Well, hey, thank you again for being here. Always appreciate it, more than you know. And look forward to having you back. I know you're a big college basketball guy. We'll get you back here, in a few weeks to talk some college basketball as March Madness approaches.
Love it. Appreciate it, man. Always good.
Please subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share.